Welcome back, students, for our color box part 2 demonstration. This is where we get started painting our picture now that it's all set up. Here's a view of the still life next to the final painting, or at least the final painting for. So we are going to start off painting by scratching, doing that Sgraffito drawing. Is a very easy way to get your proportions, your sizes, the basic layout of your picture without having to worry about a pencil or anything else. You can have the oil paint do the work. You can fix it. You can readjust it. If it's not exactly perfect, you're going to usually go through and paint on top with the darker color so you can fix it even in that stage if there's something wrong. But as long as you make pretty decent guesses at how big things are, where they go, what their big angles are, and most of us can do that, then all we have to do is just start to draw with our paint on top of this, and it will look pretty good. We'll have it lined up. So I think we're about done with that stage. So I'm going to go ahead and get started by mixing up some blue oxide, just a little bit of the blue oxide into an alizarin that I use to tone the canvas. And then I'm going to start to draw on top of my scratch drawing with this bluer color. So this is the first part of my demonstration. This is where I'm trying to be maybe a little bit more accurate than the other drawing. You might see me occasionally holding up my brush to kind of measure an angle, or drawing on the side of one area and then finding something similar on the other side. This Stein is very symmetrical, so I want to kind of block it in symmetrical in a symmetrical manner. Here I'm shading a little bit. So instead of doing a drawing where the drawing's perfect and then start shading, I'm kind of doing both at the same time. I'm using this Stein as kind of my key object. I can see it very clearly. It's not blocked by anything. It's up front in my picture. It's simple. So because of all those reasons, that's why I'm kind of starting there. Get a little more medium on my palette. And from there, I'll go through and start drawing a little bit more. I've got the Stein kind of blocked in. Now it's time to get that number 6, kind of finding the openings in the top and where it's a little bit darker, doing a little bit of measuring, getting those verticals lined up. I picked a strange angle for the number 6. You can see it kind of in the still life underneath that video on the left. It's just tricky. I didn't want to set it up in a way that it was facing straight at me. And you'll notice that I do this with a lot of your objects in your still life pictures that I send you. The reason why is when things are at a trickier angle or a different angle, you're able to use light to describe the form. And if I just face it straight at me, often it's a little bit more boring. It's not as dynamic, and it's harder to show the form. So I'm purposely giving it an angle. It's slanting from the top left to the bottom right, and the face is facing over to the right instead of facing straight at me. As a consequence, it took me a little bit more work to go through and draw it correctly. I think I still could make it a little bit better as I go back day 2, and I'll probably start by redrawing some things and doing some corrections once things are a little bit more dry. It's going to take probably a full day or day and a half to dry, so I probably won't get to finish this painting until the weekend. It's wet. I painted it yesterday, so I don't think I could go back into it without some struggle on a day like today. So I've got that blocked in. Now I'm going to block in my um, sculpture, which is a 3D printout of David's eyes from the Michelangelo sculpture. Basically, we kind of took a pretend section and kind of cut that off and printed it out, and then painted it white like the sculpture, like the marble. I do believe that it's pretty close to the full 100% size. Here I'm drawing the vertical that divides the left wall from the right, so the blue from the yellow. Here's the line that represents dividing the yellow from the floor that's red. Depending on how zoomed in you are, you may want to draw those lines first. And I'm going to warn you right away, make sure that your lines at the bottom where the floor meets the picture, that they are horizontal enough. Too many people want to draw them very, diagonal, 45 degree. And you're not going to see that unless you're standing directly above the still life. And I didn't take any pictures at that spot. So if you're using any of the pictures that I took, you should not have that angle in your picture. So we're going through, we're building it up. I am going to use the rag to erase a little bit of the paint away. So this is kind of like a semi wipeout, just to make sure that there's less red paint in maybe some of the light areas versus, you're going to have more red paint in the shadows and the reflected areas, is my guess. So we're going through, and now that that's done, we'll get back to drawing just a little bit with the brush. Most of this mixture is blue oxide inside of the alizarin red. I was mostly drawing with it because I knew it was going to be transparent, and I knew that it wasn't going to get too dark. It was going to blend in with the red quite a bit. I could have used any of the blues that were on my palette. I think I just chose that because I was interested in continuing to use it. But I could have used the ultramarine blue or the cobalt blue. Both of those might have been just a little more opaque. But as you see, I'm going to go through and I'm going to block it one way, and then I'm going to turn around and change it again. That push and pull process of making a guess, assessing what it looks like, deciding whether you want to change something or you're just going to keep it exactly how it is. So we've got that going through and blocking in the other eye. I think in the end, I end up moving the eye that's on the lower right up and into towards the nose just a little bit. I think I pushed it out just a hair and overestimated the space between the shadow and where the eyes started. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think I could have spent more time getting that part of the drawing more correct. But sometimes you have extra time to go through and perfect your drawing, and other times you don't. And my main goal was to try to make sure that I had something new for all of you to see before class, and so that you can kind of get started on yours and you have an idea how I went through and started for this semester's painting. Not just the ones from previous semesters that are not narrated and are just music with it. So there is the layout, and I think I'm getting ready. Oh, I've got to draw there's the circle ellipse lid to the stein. It's way up high behind the 6. Now it's time to start painting with white paint. So I'm going to do that with the highlights, the areas where it's the brightest. I know that the wet red background is wet and that it's going to blend. It's going to kind of turn things pinkish. That's okay. I can keep building paint on top of that. So you'll notice sometimes I'm drawing with a very thin line and trying to put down a stroke of, thicker, whiter paint, in the highlight areas. Other times I'm going to use the fatter part of the brush and I'm going to kind of drag or pull the paint a little bit more, let it blend a little bit more. And what I'm going to do for this whole tutorial, once we get to the third part, is you're going to see that I'm going to kind of let a lot of this sit for a while, dry out a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and work back into it while it's still wet and add more white to bring it up even like another level of brightness. But here at the beginning, I'm just looking for the highlights going along that kind of like eyebrow ridge and his like, furled eyebrows. He's kind of trying to show an angry look there. Here's some of the highlights along the center of the stein where the light's catching. Soon we're going to go to some reflected lights and show some of that color. There's a couple highlights along the number 6. I think these kind of disappear for a while and then I bring them back right at the end as well. The lid to the stein has a couple of highlights there as well. And, most of the bottom right side is in shadow, as you can see in the still life behind the video there. So you can see those. Now I'm blocking in some of the darker shadows again, kind of making those show up a little bit more and making them stand out. So I'm kind of trying to show my high highlights and my darkest darks at the same time, trying to bring out all the main parts of my picture, so then I can kind of find the values and the different parts in between. So now that I've got all that started, I'm going to start painting in the yellow. So the yellow wall is probably one of the biggest areas of any color in the picture. So I'm kind of starting there. Plus it's going to show up really easily. Definitely had a lot of this blend in more than I thought it was going to. So I think there's going to be a lot of second day touch-ups to this yellow area. But for now, I'm letting it blend into it, kind of building it up. Looking at my still life, it definitely gets a lot greener as it moves towards that center next to the blue. There's kind of like the area behind the cast, Michael's eyes there. David's eyes, sorry. Michelangelo by David. David by Michelangelo. But the blue is reflecting into the yellow, and likewise the yellow reflects into the blue. So when you get two walls that meet together, and if there's bright color there, they really start to influence how the other one looks. And I think the yellow ends up taking more of the blue influence. Here's some reflected light in the number 6. There's some reflected light in the stein, the areas that face over to the right side. I'm going to clean this brush off. I thought I was going to use that brush for a little bit more, but what I end up doing is grabbing a new brush. I have a couple extra brushes around, so I'm almost using a different brush for every color. I know that that's not fair, but I have them, so I ended up doing that just to make things quick. So now we're using blue. I'm using the cobalt blue and I'm mixing it with some white to make it lighter. As I mix that with the red, it automatically is making quite a darker blue. So I think I end up mixing more with some white as well. After I block in some of these reflected lights over on the left side of the stein, that metal's going to pick up a lot of the reflected blue from the wall. And then there's a lot of shadows that are kind of up higher in the cast that are going to pick up little bits of blue. If I kind of like squint, that's the sense that I get. And so that's why we're going to amplify that. we're going to exaggerate some of those brighter colors. So I'm kind of making the part near the center a little bit lighter because that is where the yellow is starting to brighten up the blue. And I ended up getting a bunch of interrupting phone calls, so my video kept cutting out yesterday. Good old spam. So this video is nearly over. After I put in a couple touch-ins here, you'll see the finish of this and kind of adding in some of the red and some of the other colors. I've got a little bit of gray that I'm adding in now. But this is about where this part of the demonstration is going to end. And we'll move to the last part of day 1 in the next video. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps you kind of understand how to get started, and we'll see you for the next video.